Hare Krishna, we're studying from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 14, entitled The Three Modes of Material Nature. We're on text 5. Chapter 14, text 5 is June 20th, 2021. And this is a Bhakti Yoga Enlightenment Program. All right, so chapter 14, Bhagavad Gita as it is, text 5. Sattvam Raja Tama Iti Guna Prakriti Sambhava Nibadnanti Mahabaho Dehe Dehinam Avyayam Sattvam Rajas Tama Iti Guna Prakriti Sambhava Nibadnanti Mahabaho Dehe Dehinam Avyayam Sattvam Rajas Tama Iti Guna Prakriti Sambhava Nibadnanti Mahabaho Dehe Dehinam Avyayam Sattvam Rajas Tama Iti Guna Prakriti Sambhava Nibadnanti Mahabaho Dehe Dehinam Avyayam Sattvam Rajas Tama Iti Guna Prakriti Sambhava Nibadnanti Mahabaho Dehe Dehinam Avyayam Sattvam Rajas Tama Iti Guna Prakriti Sambhava Nibadnanti Mahabaho Dehe Dehinam Avyayam. Hare Krishna, would anyone online like to recite the verse?
Sattvam Rajas Tama Iti
Sattvam Rajas Tama Iti
Guna Prakriti Sambhava
Prakriti Sambhava
Nibadnanti Mahabaho
Nibadnanti Mahabaho
Dehe Dehi Namavyayam.
Dehe Dehinam Avyayam. Sattvam, mode of goodness. Raja, mode of passion. Tama, mode of ignorance. Iti, thus. Guna, qualities. Prakriti, material nature. Sambhava, produced of. Nibadnanti, does condition. Mahabaho, O mighty armed one. Dehe, in this body. Dehinam, the living entity. Avyayam, eternal. Translation. Material nature consists of the three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the living entity comes in contact with nature, he becomes conditioned by these three modes. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The living entity, because he is transcendental, has nothing to do with this material nature. Still, because he has become conditioned by the material world, he is acting under the spell of the three modes of material nature. Because living entities have different kinds of bodies, in terms of the different aspects of nature, they are induced to act according to that nature. This is the cause of the varieties of happiness and distress. Om Ganatimirandasya Gananshana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paritana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Garange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishabhanu Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatayubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine, Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini, Nagashesha Shunyabhati Paschatya Desha Tarine. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, text 5. Sattvam rajas tama iti guna prakriti sambhava nibadnanti mahabaho dehe dehinam avyayam. Material nature consists of the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the living entity comes in contact with nature, he becomes conditioned by these modes. Hare Krishna. So chapter 14 is entitled The Three Modes of Material Nature. It was possible that we were going to get some guests who would be their first program. And so I thought, okay, so the first word in this verse is sattva. And so I was going to talk about sattva tov. And it's like, so what is a sattva tov? What's that?
Oh, clever.
Yeah, clever. Thank you. Exactly. Okay. At the same time, of course, we don't know who will listen to the recording or watch the recording over the next year, 10 years, generations to come. So, but still, amongst those who are here, you've all already heard of Sattva Tov. Yes, you've heard of Sattva Tov. So, okay, so.
From a distance.
Yes. Mm-hmm. All right. So there's three modes of material nature. The gunas, guna means rope. We have this word here, nibadnanti, in this verse means to condition. The English word bondage. Guna, rope, nibadnanti. Okay. So the three gunas, they are a way of classifying material nature. They're like a schemata to help us understand material nature. And simultaneously, they are the very stuff of matter. So this is, from my point of view, we say Krishna is inconceivable and he has a form that's unlimited. Material nature is also inconceivable. So Krishna arranged that this whole framework, this whole paradigm of the three gunas, it's what matter is made of, and simultaneously, it's a categorization scheme to understand matter. So They're both true. Okay. And so, so we developed in the 1990s the Vedic Personality Inventory. So it's a psychological assessment tool based on the three modes of material nature. And the idea behind it is we're taking what's called the Bhagavad Gita hypothesis. The Vedic Personality Inventory, all the items, they were devised from chapters 14, 17, and 18 of Bhagavad Gita. That's where we got all the items. And then we tested them according to rigorous social science methods. So, the idea is that Bhagavad Gita is asserting, in modern research terminology, a empirical base. It's a hypothesis, an empirical basis for happiness, or an empirical basis for all of the contract qualities, to use terminology with which we're familiar: fulfillment, vibrancy, inner peace, security, joy, happiness. Empirical means that, okay, it can be tested. So that to the extent that one develops and cultivates the sattvic as opposed to the rajasic or tamasic habits in life and worldviews, that will correlate positively with all of those states of being, all those qualities of experience that we're all searching for. As St. Francis said, we are searching for what is searching, right? In all of our doing and acquiring, we're always going for some experience of happiness, joy, power, love, importance, value, security, like that. We can deconstruct it. Anything we do, it's always for some experience. So that to the extent that we have and cultivate the sattvic habits and the sattvic worldviews, that will correlate positively with all those contract qualities, all those qualities that are intrinsic to the soul. We're searching for what is searching. So we're searching for the soul, which is searching in material conditioned life. And so Bhagavad Gita, chapters 14, 17, 18, they describe about 19 life areas. And they describe, here's what it looks like in ignorance. Here's what it looks like in rajas, in reactive activity, in activity that's driven by the strings, driven by need and insecurity and fear. And here's what it looks like in sattva. In sattva, which is like, sattva is like the foundation to begin to get out of the box, Sometimes sattva, we've used this analogy, compared to like the airport. So if I want to fly to London, so the best launching pad is the Jacksonville or Orlando airport. At the same time, if I'm at the airport and I don't get on the plane because I get too comfortable there, and sattva can be comfortable, if I don't get on the plane, reading a nice book, nice music, shops, whoa, it's pleasant here, then I haven't gotten out of the box. I've gotten to the platform. The best platform for getting to London is that airport. But I'm still within the box. It's still Florida. I'm really not much closer to London than I was in Alachua. Actually, we had just 4 days ago, we had the first class of PPTC Part 2. And we discussed there about the three gunas, the three modes of nature, as a foundation for transformational coaching. And I gave a presentation, and so and then there was very enlivening, very intelligent questions. And for many, this was like their first exposure to the three gunas. And I think he won't mind. I'm going to say his name. His name is Serge. His name is Serge, and he hadn't really been exposed to this before. And but he's a very philosophical mind. So he just said, "Let me see if I'm understanding." So tamas, that's like passive. We're too fearful to act. And rajas is, he used the term, rajas is like activity. It's activity, but we're on the machine. Like he was essentially quoting Bhagavad Gita, even though he doesn't know what Bhagavad Gita is. And he goes, and then sattva, he used the term, it's a catalyst for change. Like it's activity that actually takes us off the machine. So I said, I'm going to take notes there because I'm going to borrow that from you. And I just did. So, yeah. So today I was listening to a class, not from this chapter, a class from Prabhupada. And Prabhupada used an analogy, which I've heard before, but I listened more closely today. So he says, okay, so the spirit soul falls into the material nature from our original transcendental state of being. The living entity falls. And he gave three examples to illustrate the three modes. Three examples. It goes, so the living entity can fall onto earth or dry grass. No, it can fall onto dry grass. And then it's like the flame, the spark of the fire comes out of the fire, like we've left Krishna. Krishna is the fire. And the spark comes out of the fire onto dry grass. The dry grass represents sattva. Immediately it'll be fire again. It'll be fire again. So we associate with sattva gun because there's a distinction. There's material sattva, and then there's Shuddha sattva, which is spiritual sattva. Material sattva, it's often described, material sattva, because it's material, there's always some tinge of rajas and tamas. Okay. And then spiritual sattva, it's not just, it's like material sattva, but without any rajas and tamas. That's not quite true. It gets to a distinction. Spiritual sattva, it's a completely different entity altogether. It's a completely different entity altogether. Okay, so it's not just material sattva, but without the rajas and tamas. That it's Krishna's internal potency. It's Krishna's self-revealing potency, where Vaikuntha is revealed. So still, they're both called sattva because they share the quality of bringing to conscious experience and perception that which was not perceived. So in material sattva, that might mean like, oh, I wasn't realizing until this session, or until this reading, or until this seminar, I wasn't realizing that I was using guilt to get attention. That I wasn't conscious of that, but now I see that. Or I wasn't aware of that power within, and I was giving my power away to avoid responsibility. That's why we call it sattva tov. Okay, that which was not that which was not available to perception becomes available to conscious awareness through introspection, through empathic listening, through all the methods. And then spiritual sattva, which is it's of a different nature than material sattva. Material sattva, it does the same thing, though fully on the spiritual platform. It's not like bringing to conscious awareness all my deceptive strategies and self-defeating games and like that, because in spiritual sattva we're beyond that. Well, the spirit soul's beyond that. Okay, so spiritual sattva, then it's like revealing truths about, I don't know, Krishna's, I don't know because I'm not experiencing it, but it's revealing truths about Krishna and his flute, truths about the Yamuna River, truths about Vaikuntha and Vrindavan Dham and the different rasas with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like that. So that's how they have shared, that's how they're similar. Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Haribo. So we're studying Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, text 5. We just discussed the distinction between spiritual sattva and material sattva, and how spiritual sattva is not just the material sattva without rajas and tamas. It's a different entity altogether. Yeah. And so Prabhupada, Hare Krishna Bhakti Stefan and Bhaktin Brielle, Hari Hari Bo. So Hare Krishna, Hari Bo. So dry grass, that's like sattva, that's like material sattva. And then Prabhupada says, okay, and then the spark can also land on earth or wet grass. That represents rajas. The spark's still there. The spark is still there, but like it's hard to really ignite. And then Prabhupada said, and then the spark can leave the fire and land in water. That's like tamas. It's completely extinguished. Of course, the spirit soul is never completely extinguished, but it's an analogy to give us an idea. It's an analogy to give us an idea. And so, because we talk about in transformative coaching or transformative communication, not just coaching, but like meeting ourselves and meeting people where they're at, and always speaking to the spark that's eager to grow. So even if we're like thick tamas, thick ignorance, there's always that spark that wants to grow, and we get to facilitate. We get to be a facilitator to fan that spark in whatever form that takes. And okay, all right. So today's Father's Day. That's why some of you are here. Some of you brought prashad. Okay, the whole thing. Yes, and yeah. So okay, so there's in my personal reading, I'm reading Canto 5, and in I'm on chapters 5. Today I went to chapter 6 about Maharaj Bharat. So just like yesterday, I was on chapter 5, and so it's the teachings of Rishabhadev. So he's the archetype father. So he was instructing his 100 sons, right? Right. Instructing his 100 sons, starting with Nayam Deo Deam Bajam Riloke Kastan Kamamahati Vid Bujamye Vidru Bujam Te Tapo Divyam Prachakinisabam Sudya Yasmad Brahma Sakyam Tvanantam. And so he starts his instructions to his 100 sons, saying, don't settle for the sort of happiness that's available to pigs and dogs. So this is what fathers do. No, well, actually, the term he uses is don't settle for the quality of happiness that's available to the stool eaters. Okay. Very palatable. And he goes, so human life is meant for tapu divyam putrakyena sattvam. It's meant for voluntarily engaging in spiritual austerities, voluntarily giving up immediate gratification for enduring really eternal fulfillment that will be a source of ever increasing, unending bliss. And then he goes to, okay, so how to do that? Mahat sevam dharam, mahat sevam ahor vimuktes. Do you know the next line? Or just that one?
Nope.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that for me, that's one of those verses where I say the first line, then people think I know the whole verse.
Yeah.
You do that a lot too.
Yeah.
Because I got a few verses, I know the whole thing. I got some verses, I just say one line, I go, oh, he knows the whole verse. And then I'm revealing my secret very vulnerably. Mahat sevam dharma horavi. This time I forgot even the first line, but I'll be here to help me. Right. So yeah. So then when I do the one line thing, then I've achieved the goal of the class. People think I'm smart. Right. Then we can all go home. Okay. So Mahat Sevam means associate with great souls, associate with Mahatmanas, Tumam Porta Devim Prakim Ashita, Prajanyananiman Sugata Bhutatim Avya.
Oh, you knew order line.
That one I knew more than the first line. There you go. Yes. So sadhu sangha, association. Now, in one sense, association is not so important because we can see, like Srila Prabhupada, he left the association of Vrindavan, and he went to where there's no association. So we can say Prabhupada didn't need association because he's always associating with Bhakti Siddhanta in his heart. He's always associating with Krishna and Lord Ramachandra and Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman, and Rupa Goswami. He's always intimately associating with them, even when he's having a heart attack on the Jaladuta, or when he's with the hippies and beatniks in San Francisco or New York. He's associating with them like that. So we do want to aspire for that, where we don't need the external association, but that can be very misused. Because that the one thing. So even if devotees are on, because like the six Goswamis, well, they're certainly at that platform. They don't need the external association, and they're so joyful and inspired to associate with each other, and like that. So we want to know ourselves, and that, like, yes, so that without regular association like this, then we become dry, and we forget our connection with Krishna, and worse, we forget that we've forgotten our connection with Krishna, right? Because the nature of Maya is we become forgetful of not just our connection with Krishna. I forget who I am as a spirit soul, but you can't tell me that I've forgotten, because I'm doing great. I'm doing fine. My spiritual life, it's humming right along. And I've like slipped way down into the slippery slope, into a deep pit. And I think I'm on top of the mountain. That's the nature of Maya. So with association, then we immediately, we awaken to what we've forgotten. And with associate, of course, it's also there's the feedback aspect of association. Like, there's something I'd like to bring to your awareness, Prabhu, that sort of thing. And that can be very helpful. And apart from that, just hearing Bhagavad Gita, engaging in kirtan. Malini led a kirtan at the start of our program. And so I've awakened to, wow, I missed these kirtans. Yes, this awakens me to who I really am, and I forgot that I was sleeping. So then, so Rishabhadev, all 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam are sublime and transcendental. Those verses from Rishabhadev, right there in the 5th chapter of the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that there are some of the verses Prabhupada quotes the most from all of Srimad Bhagavatam. So like they're really, really for us. We go a little farther to chapter 18, and he has a classic father verse, also a mother verse. He talks about moms and dads, and gurus and teachers. Guru nasasyat, svajano nasasyat, vida nasasyat, janani nasasyat. That's the first 2 lines.
Daivam na tatsyan na patishchasa. Oh, wait, no.
You're pretty good there. Daivam, demigod.
Yeah, Daivam means demigod. Daivam nasasyat, na patishchasasya, namochayadya samupetam mrityum. Yeah,
Namochayad means liberation. Namochayad means liberation. Namochayad means if one cannot liberate. Michu means death. Namochayad samupetam mrityum. So Rishabhadev is telling his sons who will go on. Well, it's very interesting because some of his sons go on to rule the world and the planet, but not all. Some of them, they're clear from the beginning. They're all hearing him. And some of them are clear, like, I don't want to do this whole politics thing. Manage things and
managing people.
Managing people. Yeah. Managing a kingdom and an army and a family. Oh. Alexander the Great, Alexander the Great said, it is more difficult to move a family than it is to move an army. True, yeah. Right, anyone forget anything? Oh yeah, I need to just go back in and get that. So anyway, Alexander the Great, he managed armies better than families. So Lord Rishabhadev, he tells to his sons, some of his sons, they just became renunciates from the beginning. They became the giantess. In fact, like in that well-known verse in the 11th canto, Krishna Varnam Tusa Krishnam Sango Pangastaparshnam Yage Sankirtana Prayaya Jati Sumedasa, where Krishna appears in Kali Yuga as Lord Chaitanya, a sort of hidden avatar, and accompanied by his associates. He gives a Sankirtan movement, and those in this age who are intelligent, Sumedasa, those who have superior intelligence, they will engage in Sankirtan in this Kali Yuga, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So that's spoken by Karabhajana Muni to Maharaj Nimi, if I remember correctly. So that Karabhajana Muni is one of the renunciate sons of Lord Rishabhadev. So Lord Rishabhadev says in this verse, Guru Nasasya, like, be a father, be a mother, be a wife, be a husband, be a demigod, be a guru, be a teacher, be someone who others will take shelter in. Only if you're able to liberate your dependents from the cycle of birth and death. So it's a real classic father verse. First of all, he is the father speaking there. And like he goes, this is a weighty responsibility to put ourselves, to accept any position, relationship, or role where others are dependent on us. So not like trying to scare us away, at the same time wanting us to get, these are weighty positions of responsibility. And to liberate our dependence from birth to death doesn't mean like there's force in true spiritual life. There's never force. Once there's force, there's no love. But it means that we're qualified by our knowledge, by our realization, by our behavior, by the quality of our vibration, that if someone takes shelter in us, they will become free from the cycle of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi, the cycle of birth, death, old age, disease. Otherwise, Rishabhadev saying, otherwise you're like pigs, dogs, cats, because they also take care of the eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So don't neglect that, but the special opportunity, and now the special responsibility of human life, you got dependents, yeah, that you're capable to liberate them from birth and death. So it'd be like, wow, well, where do I stand in relation to that? So that can be a very healthy question. That can be a very healthy question. Yeah, let me get more rigorous and serious about cultivating my consciousness, so that whoever comes under my shelter, if I'm in the role of teacher, husband, wife, mother, father, guru, whatever, then that I can know, I know I've given my 100%. Otherwise it's, because even if we bring someone to sattva, not bring as in force, but we inspire. So that's like we gave that Orlando airport example. Another analogy Prabhupada gives here, also related to wood and the three modes. So wood is like tamas, inertia. And then the smoke is like rajas. And then the flame, that is sattva. And the sattva guna, that's what we really want. Because with the flame, you can really heat, you can cook, you can do things with the flame. So again, sattva is the most. So Krishna starts this chapter by saying that this is the most important knowledge, because in other chapters, Krishna talks about devotional service and the difference between soul and body. Here, the three modes material nature, Krishna is really meeting us where we're at. Where are we at? I'm stuck in the three modes material nature. So Krishna is saying, so here's guidelines on how to honestly acknowledge, here's where I'm at, and not doing an artificial spiritual bypass, and then how I can liberate myself through cultivating genuinely sattvic habits, sattvic qualities. Sometimes the analogy of the, like, guna means rope, or it means quality, but it means rope or string. So just like if we have a whole tangle of string, all right, and then if we generally if we pull on the string, it just becomes a knottier mess. But generally there's like one particular string we can pull in a particular way, and then it all starts to unravel. So we find the sattvic string in that messy problem, in that relationship, or that managerial, or that finances. We find that sattvic string, which we get access to the extent that we're cultivating super soul connection. We pull that sattvic string in a particular way, and then the knot in the heart begins to unravel. That's also a Rishabhadeva verse. Okay, fifth chapter, 5th canto. Pum sastriya mituni bhava metam tayor mitari daya granti mahu ato kriyakshetra sutapta viter janasya moho yamaham mameti. So he describes that the core of the knot in the heart is attraction between male and female. Attraction, tayor mitari daya grantim ahu. And then, through sex life, then that expands to land and animals and the picket fence and that, like that, right? And so, yes, exactly. So, and then it all increases the illusion, janasya moho yamaham mameti, I am this body, and this is mine, and this is mine, and I will expand. I'm the controller, I'm the enjoyer. It all increases that. So he's not being pessimistic about that. He's being realistic, not pessimistic, realistic. And then he gives, it says, okay, so if you're going to get into being husband, wife, father, mother, all right, then use that so that it's a true ashram. Ashram means shelter. It's a true spiritual shelter where you're well, you're like Rishabhadev. We're following in his footsteps without imitating. We can see he's fully qualified to provide liberation from the cycle of birth and death for his son. So he's saying, going to be a father, mother, then be like that. Be like that. Okay. So, all right. So as a general principle, we want to rigorously cultivate sattvic qualities and habits, not even necessarily for some great good reason out there, but just like if I want to be happy and fulfilled and satisfied and have real fun, Rajas and Tamas, they're almost always sources of suffering and misery, and details are given. And we said, well, I don't believe this. I'll just try it myself. Go. We talked about that yesterday during class. Brielle asked a question. And we discussed the 4 stages of learning or non-learning, right? We just hear, okay, sattva rather than rajas and tamas. Got it. We see others getting into trouble with lower mode habits around, whether it's eating, sleeping, money management, communication, basic communication, like the roadblocks to communication, right? That causes resentment and discouragement. And we could divide the grungies into grungies that are primarily rajasic, hankering and anxiety and stress, and grungies that are primarily tamasic, depression and lamentation. Okay.
How about sattvic grunges?
What kind?
Sattvic grunges.
Sattvic grunges. What's your conception of that?
I'm asking.
Yeah. Well, so that's why Vidyate Vidya Grantish Chijante Sarva Subject Shiante Chasya Kamini Chasya Eva Manishvari Chasya Eva Manishvari Drishta Eva Manishvari. So by practicing this process, coming to sattva, then the doubts in the mind are slashed, and the knot in the heart is pierced and slashed, and then we become free of them. So sattva is the liberating mode. Again, it's not Shuddha sattva, but it's the airport to get there. So sattva is the mode to liberate us from grungy stuff and self-defeating and self-sabotaging. That's the plan. So we want to cultivate sattva seriously and not make it the ultimate goal, because that could become a sattva trap, right? We can get comfortable at the airport, but it could become a real trap. Because like if we really are...
Of the seminar company.
What's that?
It's the name of the seminar company.
Sattva?
Sattva Trap.
Sattva trap, okay. Yeah. Right. Thanks for
the seminar company.
Yes. As we cultivate sattva, we might experience that. Well, I am more happy and peaceful than most others. I'm smarter than them.
Yes, you are.
I'm glad you recognize it. And then, yeah, and then that can interfere with like getting really urgent to intensely engage in devotional service. That's why generally sattva is the best platform to come to transcendental devotion. At the same time, it doesn't always work that way. Sattva can be complacent because things are going pretty well. Why get intense about chanting rounds every day? At the same time, someone could be deep in tamas and rajas, and there's some spark of a wake-up call and just really suffering in just disgusting habits and embarrassing, shameful life. And then from that place, calling out, Krishna, Krishna. And then in an instant, they are in a higher consciousness than someone who's doing nice and sattva. So it can be a little nuanced. So this verse reads, Sattvam rajas tama iti guna prakriti sambhava nibbadnati mahabaho dehi dehinam avyayam. Material nature consists of the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the living entity comes in contact with nature, he becomes conditioned by these modes. Hare Krishna. Thanks for your listening and association. Just so we're clear, so we have online Danielle and George, I'm assuming Saraswati's there somewhere, and Kim and Damayanti, very possibly Garuda, and maybe Lakshman and Siddhanta are there. And here we have Abhimanyu, Bhaktin Brielle, Ladini Shakti, Bhakta Stefan, and Mother Malini. Danielle.
Hi, Krishna. Dear Govinda, thank you so much for your class today. This idea of sattva being contaminated by material energy is something I've not heard of before. And I'm wondering if sorry. I'm wondering if this has to do with my experience a little bit, because when I find myself doing the work of pulling the weeds and, you know, clearing myself up to hopefully be a little bit more, you know, on the path, I find that it's not like an instant transformation to peacefulness.
Okay.
It's a little bit more like when I go to the gym or I do physical work and then I feel suffering from that physical work. There's soreness to my muscles or aching to my body, but it's on a non-physical. Sometimes it almost can feel like flu-like symptoms when I've done a lot of deep pulling of the weeds and interpersonal, you know, sharing, and it can feel very almost physically flu-like or very physically disturbing. Is that because of the contamination with the material energy, or is that the illusion of Maya that's keeping me from wanting? Or I know we've sometimes used the illusion of the fan blade keeping turning after we kind of pull.
Yeah.
Or is all of that kind of saying the same thing? I guess that's where I'm, because it's confusing.
Thank you, Danielle. I appreciate your practical philosophical intelligence, that you're endeavoring to take these principles and see, okay, how's that show up in my life? How's that relevant in my life? And, you know, I don't know for sure what your experience is, but that's what you're looking at. And that's what we're meant to do. This isn't just like, not some dry abstract, you know, philosophical, like, how does this apply? How can I relate to this? And so, yeah, again, like I don't know exactly what your experience is, but from what you share, yeah, that could be the residue of tamas and or rajas that's always there with material sattva. You know, it could be that, and we want to look at that. And this is, yeah, and well, as far as like, yeah, but Prabhupada uses that analogy of unplugging the fan. Actually, I just today, I had a coaching session just a few hours ago, and I used that analogy with the client who's familiar with Prabhupada's teachings. That this client was talking about, you know, some things coming in her face, and she's basically laughing at it, and she could easily get angry at the other person because they're acting unfairly, at least within the context. But she saw, not just she sees specifically some things she did, some habits she had from years ago. It's coming back at her, and then we talked about that. She could react the way she used to react, and then then the fan goes full speed, right? And or she could, yeah, like get angry with it. But then by not reacting and responding consciously, maybe it looks like empathy or just within herself, not to become disturbed, even though it is a disturbing situation. Then, because basically in her personal growth work and spiritual work, she's pulled out the plug. But the fan's still going slower and slower. And then if she encounters that karmic fan still going, and then reacts. Then it's just like she's pulling in the plug. So she got that. Okay, her job is to not pull the plug back in, not to pull the plug, not to react in the same way, be, you know, sattvic or even transcendental. And then, you know, this discussion, so this discussion relates to why we have this program. I mean, not just today on June 20th, 2021. The first Enlightenment Program was January 1st, 2011, at the home of Marie Brazis, Madri, in Gainesville, Florida. The second one was the next month at the home of Dharm Khalsa. I think the third one was hosted by Jay Ma. Like that. So we had all these different hosts. Because people were coming to a Sattva Tov, and more. We had more and more people as years went on coming, and they weren't familiar with Bhagavad Gita as is, or Srimad Bhagavatam, or Mahamantra, and they were coming to Sattva, and we would talk about, you know, the garden analogy given by Srila Rupa Goswami, pulling the weeds from the garden of the heart. I said you need to pull the weeds along with the watering. But if you just water and don't pull the weeds, then you water the weeds and the weeds strangle the flowers. Of course, if you just pull the weeds and don't water, you have a desert. That doesn't work either. So, okay. Actually, it was Madri, Marie Brazis. She came to us like around 2009 because she took all the seminars. She said, okay, you talk a lot about this pulling the weeds, and then like the most powerful experience, these Sattva Tov seminars. So what's the watering process? So Molly and I looked at each other. It was like, glad you asked. Since you asked, okay, and really because of that, and we were getting that question from a lot. That's why it was Madri, it was Marie herself she said, okay, let's do a watering process thing at my home. That was the first one. I remember. New Year's Day, January 2011. That's why we started Sattva Tov 3. We get more to the direct watering process. We started these Enlightenment Bhagavad Gita course started around that time. And so, because material Sattva is always contaminated by some tinge of rajas and tamas. And that's why we want to give this transcendental process. So like this Maha Mantra, Bhagavad Gita, this is not material Sattva. It's not just, well, it's like material Sattva without the rajas and tamas. No, it's of a different quality altogether that happens to be called Shuddha Sattva or Vishuddha Sattva. And it's where each word reveals truth and is identical with the truth that it reveals, unless it's transformation. And that's why so many of the programs came because we want to go, okay, so here's the Shuddha Sattva. Here's the Shuddha Sattva. And we encourage first ourselves and others to latch on to that Shuddha Sattva, genuinely. Because, of course, see what we were finding over the decades, like in the devotional communities, is there'd be maybe a lot of connection with Shuddha Sattva to some extent, but without cultivating the Sattva. And then it would sometimes manifest as a sort of spiritual bypass, a sort of spiritual bypass, because the sattvic habits, the sattvic communication, sattvic social structures, sattvic habits, it's a real safety net. It's a real safety net. Whereas, because like if someone could be practicing a Shuddha Sattva process, not because I'm on the Shuddha Sattva platform, but because of the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, the grace of Prabhupada, okay, we got this Shuddha Sattva process. But then, okay, then I can assume, oh no, I chant these rounds and I come to my, therefore, what you experience as impatience and intolerance, what you experience as deception or just outright lying, you just don't understand my transcendental nature. Don't you understand? I chant my rounds. And so there wasn't so much of a culture of introspection, a culture of avoiding roadblocks to communication, creating safe, sacred space. So, yeah, we often say that, like, right, so like let's say in a coaching session. So I endeavor to come to a coaching session in sattvic consciousness because it can be an illusion. I think, well, in a coaching session, I'm neutral. I'm neutral. I'm just holding space. I'm neutral. Complete nonsense. There's no neutral. There's no neutral. We're influencing with our consciousness. Yes, yeah, I want to endeavor to be neutral, that I'm not imposing my ideas of how you should live your life. I'm trusting you as the expert in your life. And even if I share a suggestion, it's with respect and in a way that conveys empowerment. Sure, there's neutral in that sense. But so whether it's a coaching session, transformation, a transformational seminar, we're basically we're creating that safe space, and then the spirit soul having human experience comes to sattva. Sattva means essentially expanded range of choice. That's essentially. In rajas and tamas, it's more narrow. I'm like on the machine. As I come to sattva, expanded range of choice. And in that expanded range of choice, I'll always choose for the good or for the transcendent. No. Expanded range of choice means I have more possibility to really mess up big time. So it's Danielle's nodding her head. Okay. Expanded range of choice means I can do more damage with this new consciousness. Expanded range of choice means I could use that range of choice to entangle myself further in tamas and rajas and desire to lord it over and feel powerful by exploiting others using empathic listening, and it's so many ways. So the coach or facilitator, we're bringing to that space our consciousness, and if my consciousness is heavily influenced by tamas and rajas because of what I just saw on the internet for 5 hours last night, if my consciousness is heavily influenced by tamas and rajas, then there's more chance that in that expanded range of choice, the others will choose tamas rajas. We've seen after Sappho seminars where everyone's in that expanded range, and it's blissful and it's joyful. And sometimes we've seen then, like, practically immediately they'll choose to get intoxicated. Scenarios like that. Whereas if our consciousness is sattva or transcendent, it increases the possibility that everyone involved will choose sattva or transcendence for their ultimate benefit. So just like okay, as an analogy, let's say there's a big corporation. All right. So let's say maybe someone's the mail clerk. And okay, because according to their, capacities, they have the position as the mail clerk. If they make a mistake, someone doesn't get the right letter. I mean, it's a mess up. Okay, but they can make a mistake. Or let's say someone's the CEO. And he or she is not just really clear and focused and balanced, and they make a mistake. Well, that might mean 15,000 people and their families lose their job, and it causes severe disturbance and disruption, because so he or she got that position because of some expanded consciousness, not necessarily sattvic, but it's the analogy. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you, dear Govinda. I think I've been watering not as much as I should be, and gardening maybe a little bit too vigorously. And I think I might be experiencing some lack of hydration spiritually. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danielle. Shravanam Kirtanam. Yeah. because weed pulling does happen in the Shravanam Kirtanam. We increase our hearing and chanting, weed pulling happens. And of course, we want to be conscious that we're doing our work, that because it's powerful. We do our hearing and chanting, and flowers grow and weeds grow. Great. Then I get to become aware of them and I get to pull them. But if I'm too attached to some false ego thing, then let's say the weed of arrogance comes up, or the weed of needing to be adored or seen as a spiritual person. But I'm not humble enough to acknowledge that I have that weed. Then I'll say, well, it's not there. Then I start watering the weed with all the hearing and chanting. Malini.
Thing I want to share, but just about what you shared, about, like Prabhupada often speak about different process not being separate and different.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering about the pulling the weed, because to focus there, and I know that's what we do in the seminar.
Yeah.
But like to bring people to the place where they want to water.
Yeah.
Like that's really our goal.
Yeah.
Like we do pulling the weed because we know that when we do pulling the weed, then the creeper has come to existence in a sense.
Yeah.
But then after that, it seems if the focus becomes pulling the weed as a separate endeavor from the watering of the creeper, then I'm not sure it's fully conducive for spiritual life, because it becomes a separate endeavor.
Yeah.
I can probably do speak about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that. I appreciate that.
It seems that if we do chant sincerely, or read sincerely, or do our sadhana sincerely, like you said, things that we are supposed to work on, the weed that we are supposed to work on, they come to our face.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a question of truthfulness and honesty.
Yes.
Like, not like, okay, sometimes I seek to, pull the weeds there because I'm more comfortable with those weeds. But then the process itself bring to the surface what I'm supposed to do when there is no separate endeavor.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, that we chant sincerely, we read Bhagavatam sincerely. And now if I'm paying attention when I'm reading Prabhupada's books, then like I'm seeing myself in some uncomfortable ways, right? So if we're sincere in that, then the darker side, lower mode stuff comes up, greed, envy, lust, stuff like that. And then if we're sincere, we also get the super soul realization of how to eliminate it, of how to eliminate it. So that comes to, and so Krishna, Super Soul, Prabhupada, they could work through like processes and seminars or coaching packages or things like that. And what you said, that's why, we often say, like, I'm really not inherently interested in a collection of communication skills just for the sake of it. I'm excited about a communication-based approach to self-realization. And similarly with the different transformational processes, because otherwise, it can become New Age psychobabble.
And empty.
And empty. Yeah, and empty. And then it can be like, okay, well now, I don't want to be too satiric, but well, after you shared that withhold about the withhold I shared, I've immediately see that I don't think that you're thinking that I'm feeling, that I'm really caring about what you're thinking, that you're thinking I'm feeling.
Exactly.
And at that time, it's time to retire. Then it's time to retire. Okay?
Then pulling the weed can become an exercise in self-absorption.
It can be an exercise in self-absorption.
Rather than devotional service.
Yeah. And that's where, like, what Danielle shared, like let's increase our hearing and chanting. And it's often true, because we know, like, maybe more than any other community in the world, we don't neglect quality communication, pulling the weeds. But then sometimes there can be so much stuff there, group, and sometimes like, okay, let's do 45 minutes of kirtan together. And then it's kind of after that, like, what was the withhold again? And it's not even because it's not because I'm pushing it down like a beach ball, because we've truly transcended it. So the watering process is really important. Like vital. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm not interested anymore.
Yeah, otherwise it can become stale and empty.
Stale and empty.
Yeah, I heard that Srila Prabhupada, I heard that Srila Prabhupada's favorite pastime was Rishabhadev. Did you hear that too?
Oh, okay. Prabhupada's favorite pastime was Shabbadev. You know, I have a vague memory. I heard that on a memory. Like I certainly haven't seen that written.
Yeah.
But I think
Prabhupada does quote extensively from Lord
he does quote extensively.
Yeah. And that verse, recently I was speaking with a friend and about that verse, and that verse sometimes is misunderstood. The verse go and associate.
Sajjana and Asasi.
Yeah, or that verse, because it seems that this verse sometimes is put against the result.
Yeah.
And then on both sides, on one hand, create abuse. People like really wanting to look like I'm capable of serving my progeny, so I'm going to make sure they're saved.
Yes.
And that doesn't work too well. Or on the other side, like, like disciples, falling away, or children falling away, not being absorbed or in Krishna consciousness, becoming like a point of criteria for looking at the qualification of the guru or the father or the mother.
Yeah.
So I've seen those misinterpretations there, because the verse doesn't say anything like that. It's just like what you were expressing, it's just qualification. And the qualification may or may manifest in result,
different
from
ways.
The result, but it's not judged by the result.
Thanks for that. Yeah. It's about a consciousness.
It's about
And I mean, maybe a classic example, like Sri Advaita Charya. Sri Advaita, so he's completely qualified to deliver the whole universe. He's to deliver the whole universe from the cycle of birth and death. Yes. And it's described he had 6 sons. 3 of them, headed by Achyutananda, were like sweet, pure devotees. And 3 of his sons were Mayavadi impersonalists. Yeah. So it's just like Prabhupada gives the example. Prabhupada gives the example that like Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya, Srimati Radharani, the 6 Goswamis, we are giving you the light. You're drowning in the Pacific Ocean. You're drowning in the Pacific Ocean, and we're giving you the lifeline. And then Prabhupada emphasizes, it's up to you to grab the lifeline. No one will do that for you. I'm waiting for the mercy. The mercy is the lifeline. You need to choose to grab it. And Prabhupada, that's your responsibility. That's your, because we could think, I'm not waiting for any mercy or grace. I'm a great swimmer. I was on the high school team. It's like, you're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. There's no land for 1,500 miles. It doesn't matter that you're on your high school team. So that's material life is, I don't need any lifeline, or I need the lifeline, but then some false humility. I'm praying for the mercy. It's up to you. So it means if we're in the role of husband, wife, father, mother, teacher, guru, that means we're fully qualified to give a lifeline that'll get you on the ship back home, back to Godhead. We're fully qualified to give the lifeline. And then everyone, those who are in a position of taking shelter, they can grab the lifeline or not. Thank you, Molly. Hare Krishna.
Krishna. I was thinking a lot about the airport analogy.
Yeah.
Because I was flying.
Recently,
so
yeah.
I think about it when I fly. And what was interesting, so I wanted to fly from Czech Republic to Florida,
Yes.
which is west.
Yeah.
And then I was driving 10 hours east to do that. And so this that was like going like the map analogy.
Yeah.
Going a different direction,
Yeah.
a long way.
Yes.
And so
You actually got further from Florida.
yeah. And like I was thinking about it as a metaphor for the spiritual life, that maybe sometimes it's also important to make step back to like, yeah, like, I don't know, like getting up every day at 4 a.m. and then like being burned out and then like realize, oh, well, maybe that's not where I'm at. I need to get up at 7 a.m. every day so I can like keep it going for the next 30 years. So,
Yeah, take a two steps back, and then you get more perspective. That's an interest, yeah, because your recent experience, you had to go through a lot to come to that Sattvic platform
oh my God.
of the Belgrade airport. So that I'm sure that analogy is very alive for you.
Yeah, to get to that Sattvic platform was really quite something.
I think it's very illustrative. Yeah, okay, I've had, in some circles, I wouldn't talk about this too much, but I've had clients who are like, for decades, they're chanting it, fulfilling their vow to chant at least 16 rounds per day. And then through their Sattva experience, they stop chanting 16 rounds per day. Right. And yeah. And then
they give a bad reputation.
I give a terrible reputation to Sattva.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And at the same time, even when they were not just good, they gave up other practices too. And I could tell, like, this is healthy for them.
Yeah.
And not it's healthy because of, and the way it played out often is then maybe they come back a few months or a few years later and they're really enthused.
Or maybe sometime a few decades or a lifetime.
It can play out in so many ways, but I've seen it play out where they've really transformed from, oh, I have to chant my rounds, I have to get up for Mangalarti. And it's so, and the reason why it's have to is because it's so connected, because I want to be a good devotee, I'm fearful. What if I'm criticized? I need to belong to this club, or I'll, okay, I lead kirtan, so the women like me. They like me when I play mridanga, and there's just so much other stuff around. And then they leave for a while and they come back with a real fresh enthusiasm to chant their rounds and to engage in kirtan like that. So there's truth to the Belgrade airport analogy. Hare Krishna.
My dear Sattva, my understanding is never free of Raja and Tamas.
Material sattva is never free of rajas and tamas.
There's not such a thing as Madhya's Sattva without
Rajas and tamas.
Because by definition, that's Madhya's Sattva.
Yeah.
I think they used to call mixed sattva sometimes.
Yeah, mixed. And Prabhupada makes that point so much. Yeah, material sattva is always mixed.
Yeah.
And that's why even or especially amongst devotees, even amongst like scholars, there's like maybe a subtle conception sometimes. So the pure sattva, well, it's like the same stuff as what we call sattva, but just without the rajas and tamas. But that's not true. It's a different energy altogether, and it happens to also have the name sattva. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, because even like the start in Sattva, everything is in Sattva, but because it's mixed with Raja and Tamas to some degrees, then the edge provides, and it provides up to those, the heavier.
In Satya Yuga, yeah, right. Yeah, the mixture of rajas and tamas gradually increases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it needs to be there at the start.
Yeah.
Or even planets, it's like It's there also sattva sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's also mixed there.
For sure. Yeah, that's demigod, heavenly consciousness mixed with Rajas and Tamas.
So in a sense, there is no pure material sattva.
There is no pure material sattva. It's a contradiction in terms.
Contradiction in itself.
Yeah.
I think also the material body needs all three. Like tamas is sleep,
Yeah.
so the material body needs to sleep.
Mhm.
The transcendental body doesn't need to sleep. Rajas is like the activity or the digestive fire, for example. So it's like my understanding is that the material body cannot even exist without the combination of the three.
Otherwise, it's a spiritual body.
Exactly. It doesn't need to sleep or digest and do things like this.
Yeah, and we had that discussion on Wednesday at our PPTC coach training, because that came up in the discussion. Someone was talking about seasons in different modes. So I brought it to, well, in 24-hour cycles, you got different modes. And so that's the idea of this, the science of the modes. The science of spiritual life is we don't pretend we have a spiritual body. And so we say that's why, like, I was always a night person before I came to Prabhupada's movement. I still have that tendency. But now I'm happy to say I'm at the point that, like, if I'm not up at 4:30 a.m. or earlier, I feel like I really miss something, because that's the best hours. That's when sattva is predominant. That's the best hours for sattvics reading, spiritual practice, like that. All right, then we can all feel. We can all feel, okay, 11 a.m., noon, 2 p.m. Yeah, we can still read philosophy books at that hour, but it's more difficult than at 6 a.m. So that's the time for business. And that's when the body, business. And then I asked the coach training group, I said, and what's the time of day when the most stupid things happen? They had their videos on and they were smiling, because if they didn't laugh, they would cry. I said, come on, what's the time when the stupidest things happen? Oh yeah, right. So those hours late at night, those are the best hours for sleeping. Right? We're sleeping, that's when the body wants to naturally sleep. Of course, we can do our sleeping from noon to 6, and we can do it, but it's not natural. So
I've tried it before. It doesn't feel quite the same.
Yes, that's right. You did a whole year of that.
For the night shift, yes.
Yes.
I don't know, just somehow it's not quite the same.
Yeah, right.
Even with the same quantity of hours, just something's missing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and you survived.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah, based on
And
results.
then, like, the stupidest things happen. And then if we sleep, there is less chance.
Exactly.
So we don't get in those stupid things.
Right.
So it's important to sleep all the tamasic hours.
Exactly.
And in Czech Republic, we have like 11 hours of them in the winter. So what can I do? Just to protect myself.
That's it. Yeah, we
Not stupid things.
can make plans how to not do foolish things in those hours, but the simple plan is use it for sleeping.
Go to sleep. I can see myself, like, not the last few months, but before that, in the evening, like, tired, it will be easier for me to go mindlessly on the internet.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
during the day, I'm busy.
Right.
When I'm a little tired and, I'm too tired to read a book, but now that, it's been maybe not the time to go to sleep, then yeah, like, I can be taken away and go to places that are, stupid.
I completely relate to that.
It's true, I never
Instead
thought
of
of
going
it.
to sleep. So, okay, time to go to bed. Nothing wrong with that.
I have a question.
Brielle.
I don't know how all the things connect, so I'm just gonna speak. I was speaking with Mother Melanie, I think yesterday, and we were talking about the story of, was it Narada Muni being visited by Krishna like once? How Narada Muni like got to experience direct realization of Krishna, who's seeing Krishna, and then Krishna disappeared for the rest of his lifetime. And it was like this carrot on the stick that just kept him going.
She cried when I shaved it, so it
Did.
was good tears.
Very purifying tears then.
Yeah, it was very good.
Yeah, I feel that inside. I guess my question is around mercy, and like, how does that work? Or maybe that question is like an oxymoron. Maybe it's no way it works. Maybe that's the thing, but.
I mean, like by definition, like I read the word causeless mercy is kind of redundant because mercy is by definition causeless. Like it's not about what you don't. Mercy is not a thing you deserve. It's almost by definition something you don't necessarily work for or deserve. Like that's what makes it mercy.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. It was a kind of paradigm shift for me yesterday to realize like, oh, it's not like I am sincere and then Krishna reveals himself. But that's what we've been talking about. We've been saying that actually, like Krishna reveals himself to the degree that we're sincere. So I've heard that so many times.
Yeah.
So then when it's like, oh, there's no like, I do X and then Krishna does Y, like
It's not a mechanical causal relationship.
because he's a person and so
He's a
nobody works
person,
that way, of
yeah.
course.
And he's a person who's not bound by the modes of material nature.
Or of our limited expectations or attachments or whatever. Yeah, so I don't know, there's just something for me around that because I've had these really beautiful experiences with Krishna and then disappearing for a long time. And last year particularly, I experienced how spiritual enthusiasm is so out of my control in a sense.
Yeah.
Like it was forecasted in my astrology. I told this Steve before that I would have like a spiritual low last year, and literally the day after my birthday it was just like felt like it all evaporated. And that was really sad for me to feel like there's nothing I can do almost. And I know that's not true. Like I can, even when I don't feel like it, bow down or whatever. But it still feels like it's completely out of my control in a way. And there's something really both painful and beautiful about that.
Painful and beautiful.
Yeah. So I don't know what my question is. I guess how does mercy work or not work?
Well, I appreciate the discussion. What you're sharing, what Abhi expressed, mercy by definition means it's causeless.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we can prepare ourselves to invite and receive the grace of Krishna.
Yeah.
At the same time, he's not forced. Well, two examples come to mind. One is the Catholic saints, Saint Teresa, Saint John of the Cross.
Yeah.
They talk a lot about the dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
So like, these are like real saintly people, but dark night of the soul means like that they're not feeling it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes in their writings they go, okay, that's when I get to show my love for God even more. It's one thing, I'm feeling the ecstasy, I'm feeling the joy, I'm feeling the bliss, so let me serve more, let me do more austerity. But when I'm not feeling it, and that relates to the last stanza of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sri Shikshastakam, Ashlisha Vapadaradam Pinashtumam Darshanam Murmartam Kavotuba Yata Tata Vavidadatulam Putomat Pranantas Tusa Evanapara. He says, okay, Krishna, I serve you enthusiastically, not grudgingly, even if you're not present before me. And so Krishna's always giving the grace, and with Narada Muni, he gave the grace through the Bhaktivedantas, who initiated him with prasad. Just wanted to say that one. The Bhaktivedantas initiated him with prasad, and then Krishna appeared to him, so that's grace. And then Krishna not appearing to him, that's grace. That's because we might have our conception, but it means like his longing for Krishna increased. And it's the same with Dhruva Maharaj. Krishna appeared within his heart, disappeared, and appeared in front of him. So it's like Krishna is having this personal reciprocation with each of us. And
He plays hide and seek.
What's that?
You play hide and seek.
Plays hide and seek, yes.
Yeah, and you know, if we are really sincere, coming back to your sincerity, if we are really sincere, and that's what Saint John of the Cross and you know all the mystic, if we are really sincere, flowing in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya, in those time of desertic, empty spiritual life, then if we are really sincere, we develop longing. We, you know,
Yeah.
that separation, in a sense, help us to develop the longing if we are really sincere. And then we are longing like, wow, it's so empty right now. I don't feel you. I'm just mechanical with my practice. It doesn't seem like there is any juice in what I'm doing. But just that state of longing is a spiritual state too. So in a sense, you know, there is wherever we bite, there is always a way for the sensual soul to transform it into something that's highly, you know, conducive for our spiritual advancement.
I appreciate that point very much, because you kept saying, if we're really sincere, because then if I'm not sincere, then it's like, oh, okay, so this doesn't work. This doesn't work. Like I'm trying so hard, and like this, I'll just give it up. It's just like a form of, oh, give me my daily bread. Oh, let my business be successful. Oh, my business didn't go so well. Okay, forget about God. So just like maybe on a more subtle platform, Krishna will reveal himself to me in this way and that way. And then, oh, Krishna's not there in the way I wanted. So how sincere am I?
Yeah.
Bhakti George.
Hare Krishna, David. I really appreciate the discussion, and also what you mentioned earlier about the Grihastha ashram, like how it can be a shelter.
Yeah.
And the mother's role in that, and how that ties in with Sattva Tov and doing the work, you know, staying in the process. I was reminded yesterday of a song by Reba McEntire, like the country singer, where it's titled, she's referring to her father, "The Greatest Man I Never Knew," is the title of that song. And I was thinking about, you know, my relationship with Saraswati and how the thing we always say, how you can be lost to yourself for, you know, for days, years, you know, and indefinitely. And so I was just kind of, I don't know, I was wondering if you could speak maybe to the role of the father and mother, maybe in creating the ashram, in doing that. And I mean, I have a sense it has to do with sincerity, like Melanie was just saying, and following through the process. I think I was listening to Marshall Rosenberg also, and he was saying, there was some poem he was reading, and he didn't mention the author, so I couldn't look it up, but he was saying something about that, the hand holding up the mask, and how, like, after so long of holding up all these masks and being kind of externally driven to please others, and like eventually, like, there's no face behind the mask. And so I was contemplating all these things in relation to my relationship with Sarasvati. It's like, how can she know me if I don't know who I am, or if I'm so determined in this life to hold up these masks, you know, and pulling and not pulling the weeds versus pulling the weeds, and creating this sense of ashram, this sense of shelter for her, and this we like to call our apartment Bhakti Oasis. So just kind of, you know, joking.
I like that.
Yeah, and so I was wondering if you could comment maybe just broadly on Prabhupada's stance on the role of mother and father as far as the Grihastha ashram is concerned.
Okay, well, broadly, it gets into a whole course, not that I'm qualified to teach it, but I'm reminded of Albert Schweitzer said there are three essential principles for parenting. 1, example. 2, example. And 3, example. So in Sanskrit, that's called the Acharya principle. right, are so often, whether it's children or whoever, like we can't, I can't hear what you're saying because your actions speak so loud. So from the earliest age, our example speaks very loudly for transcendence, for material sattva, rajas, tamas. Oh, okay, so I just won't do anything if oh my God, I'm so scared. No, just not do anything. That's an example too.
Fear, basically.
Fear. Example, live in fear. I remember one, okay, so Prabhupada talking about parenting, two essential interrelated principles that I gleaned from Prabhupada's guidance on parenting. Provide protection and encourage autonomy. Provide protection and encourage autonomy. So of course, the balance of that looks one way when the child's 6 months old, different at 2 years old, different at 12 years old, different at 28 years old. Just thought I'd say that.
There's no more after 28.
That's not true. No, I mean, apart from my situation, no, I've had coach, because it's not like I'm a parenting coach specialist or something, but so many clients, their coaching naturally goes to parenting, and I've coached so many parents on their children are 6 and 8 and discipline, and parents on, but I've conducted parenting coaching, and the clients' children are 38 and 40 years old.
I did that too.
Yeah, you've done that too. So it never ends. Okay. So yeah, so autonomy and protection. And like if we're too much on the autonomy, like a child doesn't work, so you can figure it out, and we think we're being so empowering, but we're giving more autonomy than is age appropriate, then the child or teenager feels insecure because they want structure, they want discipline, they want guidance, and without that they feel unprotected. And of course, if we're in an age inappropriate way, too much on the provide protection and not enough encouraging autonomy, then the child or teenager doesn't develop an inner sense of responsibility and discipline, because mom and dad is telling me what I can and can't do more than is age appropriate. And I mean, we can go to a whole course here, but I remember one, just a few examples coming to mind. Yeah, this was, okay. I was coaching someone. He was maybe about your age, George. And he was married, and they were pregnant with their first child. And he had a habit. He had a habit of smoking pot. Okay. And I wasn't imposing on him, but he said, I want that when my daughter is born, that what the language he uses, when I'm a father, which meant like 5 months, when the baby's due. When I'm a father, I won't be smoking anymore. So I responded, you're already a father.
Mhm.
So it's like, oh. Meaning, you're a father of a baby in the womb. It's about 5 months in the womb. So I'm not saying you should give up smoking now. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you're already a father. Now, this protection is, of course, physical. And sometimes, we want to be sattvic. Sometimes rajas is called for, like, I don't know, let's say, of course, sattva means range of choice. Sattva does not inherently mean I'm always shanti, shanti, shanti. Sattva means that if it's my service and responsibility to connect with fierceness to protect what's dear, I'm ready to do that. Whereas in Rajas, my anger controls me. Right? Anger can be a very effective tool. Anger is a terrible master. Or tamas can mean it's time to connect with anger, but I'm too scared. And so I allow boundaries to be violated of me and my family. And so Sattva is protect, or let's say, okay, so let's say if there's a toddler reaching for the stove and there's hot pots and things. Okay, so the parent might just grab them, never touch the stove, like that. It wouldn't be time. I notice that you're walking to, and the red and the palm, it just, so sometimes can take force. As much as possible, age appropriate. I think it's helpful in a sattvic way to co-create conversation about what's healthy protective boundaries without the parent giving, because parent means higher intelligence. Parent has more intelligence. So protection also means values and morals, not just physical, but values, morals, principles. And so how strong are we or weak are we in our character, spiritual, principle wise? So, because that's vital dimensions of protection. So those are like, if we read Prabhupada's teachings, letters, provide age-appropriate protection on all dimensions and encourage autonomy age-appropriately, so that the child and teenager, they naturally cultivate an inner sense of responsibility and discipline.
I appreciate your response very much, especially the latter part about the principles and so forth. And I kind of see it, what you have you've done through Sappha and through these programs that we're talking about, for me and for Danielle and for us, through giving us Prabhupada. And it's kind of what I'm trying to do to her. It seems like that's where the protection is, it's in Prabhupada. And I was so happy today hearing her, like, she's saying his name the best she's ever been able to pronounce it. And I'm just thinking, like, yes, like there, like that's ashram, So yeah, I was just with that. So I appreciate very much your response. Thank you, David. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Dr. George. Jai. Yeah, that's very, yeah.
Srila Prabhupada often speak about his own childhood.
Yeah.
And our little children, like Saraswati, until they're 9, 10 years old, like that they are going to do everything the parents do.
Yeah.
And it's very, very easy to give them Krishna consciousness. And he speak about his own self, like his father when he was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Gave him a little set of deities.
Yeah.
And then the father will do an arti for his own deities, and then he had a little arti tray. And then the 5-year-old will do everything the father do without being told. So Prabhupada often is said with children, little children, when they get older, it's become a little bit more tricky. That they naturally do everything, they bow down and they will chant Hare Krishna, they will do arti. They look like pure devotees, little children. If they have parents who do devotional service, they are going to do everything like pure devotees. Yes. There is a channel that I really like from a Prabhupada Center devotee in China. His name is Nimai Nitai. And he have a child a little older than Saraswati. And he shows, like he takes his child to get flower, and he shows a lot of the things that he does. And himself, he grew up as a devotee, like his parents were already devotees. Yes.
Thanks for that. I like how you emphasize naturally.
It's so natural.
Yeah.
For the little kids.
Even Prabhupada said that, like.
They're all pure devotees.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And then even when the hormones kick in, but they have that training naturally, because then there's letters from Prabhupada where he hears that, like in the schools, he said, Prabhupada heard that they were forcing the kids to chant japa while marching like soldiers in the military. So Prabhupada said, what are you doing? Prabhupada wrote, in childhood, children should play. It's kind of sad that Prabhupada would need to write that. It's actually very painful that Prabhupada, but he needed to write that. In childhood, children should play, right? And he goes, Krishna consciousness is naturally joyful. You don't need to force. If you force, then when they're teenagers, they'll rebel. I mean, it's basic psychology, but like they didn't get it. And so naturally, like by Albert Schweitzer, by example, by example, oh, Dad, Mom, okay, they're getting up early and chanting this Hare Krishna on the bead. I want my beads.
I want my beads. Yeah.
Very, very naturally.
No, you don't. You're too young to have your beads. I want my beads. Maybe in 6 months.
Ladini.
I would like to go back to Brielle's topic.
Yeah.
Because like this, like wanting to see Krishna, like
Yeah.
I guess there are differences between the different devotees, but
Yeah.
some of the pure devotees, they don't pray to see Krishna, they pray to serve Krishna.
Mm.
So like right now I'm reading in Chaitanya Charitamrita how Lord Chaitanya sends Rupa Goswami to Vrindavan.
Yeah.
So Lord Chaitanya is in Jagannath Puri, and Rupa Goswami is supposed to go to Vrindavan and preach there. And of course, Rupa Goswami is sad for not seeing Lord Chaitanya anymore.
Yeah.
But I like my sense is that he's like more blissful that he gets to do the service for Lord Chaitanya than seeing him.
Thanks for that. That's completely Prabhupada's mood. That's completely Prabhupada's mood. Prabhupada discouraged the mood because he saw so many bad examples of it. I mean, before he came to America and after, but he discouraged the mood of, oh, I'll see Krishna in the bushes of Vrindavan. Krishna will appear before me, and like that. Prabhupada would sometimes say, "Work now, samadhi later." That's the mood. Work now, samadhi later. So it means like that. Yeah. So like that's the spirit. Like, how can I serve? Not how can I see Krishna. Prabhupada would say, we serve, and Krishna chooses to reveal himself to us. But the mood is, how can I serve? How can I serve more effectively and more sincerely today than yesterday? Not so much the mood Prabhupada gave.
And even like if Krishna doesn't choose to reveal to us, the service itself is just so blissful.
The service is so blissful, and Krishna is non-different from his service. That's a form of Krishna. Thanks for that, Lindy.
Yeah, and even like the 6 Goswami who serve constantly, they are with Krishna all the time.
Yeah.
They have the presence of Krishna all the time. And their mood is, where is Krishna?
Yeah.
To that. And like, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna?
Yeah.
But they are with Krishna all the time. But they are, it's like the gopis.
Prabhupada emphasizes that with the 6 Goswamis, they're with Krishna all the time, but they're never like, I was with Krishna last night, or like that. Hey Radhe Rajadevi Ke Chalalite He Nanda Sunokuta Shri Govardhana Kalpapada Patale Kalindi Vane Kuta Gosanta Viti Sarvato Rajapure Keder Mahavivala Pande Upasanatana Raghu Yugo Sri Jiva Gopalaka. Oh Lalita, oh Radharani, oh son of Maharaj Nanda, where have they gone? Where are they? The 6 Goswamis, they're wandering around the banks of the Yamuna, the forest of Govardhan, and they're seeking, where is Radharani? Where is Lalita? Where have they gone? Are they over there by the banks of the Yamuna? Are they there by Vamsivat? So Prabhupada quotes that verse a lot. To illustrate that they're not like, oh, I'm with Krishna, but like, where is Krishna? Mood of separation.
Yeah, it's interesting also connected with our conversation, how, in a sense, lamentation is in the mode of ignorance, tamas.
Yeah.
But then spiritual lamentation is very conducive for spiritual life.
Moves us deeper to
lamentation, like, I'm not feeling anything.
Yeah, and that's the key to whether it's spiritual or material. If it's material, then I become dry. I lose my inspiration, enthusiasm for chanting and reading Bhagavatam. And if it's spiritual, then it moves me to deeper enthusiasm to serve Prabhupada. That's the distinction. Sri Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Damayanti writes, thank you for the class and discussion. Wish we were there. Hare Krishna. Abhimanyu Das, would you like to lead Kirtan?
Yes.
Thank you. So Abhi will lead us in Shravanam Kirtanam.
Are we doing like the chronometers?
You can do pranams, yeah. Yeah, pranams, Panchatattva.
Yes, ma'am.
Choose your astra.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura